Matheus Rocha Pitta, slightly younger generation of artists, who is currently living in Berlin, but who also, had a very active career outside of Brazil. Last year, Matheus was here in London at the Delfina Foundation, and he's currently at the Battanian in Berlin doing a 1-year residency.
Yeah. Hello everyone. Thanks Kiki for the invitation. So just before starting, I'd just like to pay like a small homage for this last Monday. Unfortunately, we lost an amazing artist in Brazil, Tumba, and I'd just like to make a brief mention. Because he's, I think for all the Brazilian artists, he was like a very important figure, and for me, he was one of the first artists I developed like a strong passion, and I think it's a great loss we have. Anyway, let's start. In the past 4 or 5 years, my projects were centered in a very abstract way on how to make a gesture available. The work we see here is called the Primeira Pedra, which will be the first stone, and it is named after the famous episode in the Gospel that people are about to stone a woman, and it's important to remember that is a legal situation based on a juridical thing that still happens nowadays. And so everybody has like a stone in their hand, and they are about to exert this violence. And then comes this guy and says, no, come on, don't throw the first stone, that one who never did something wrong. So the first stone is this stone that's not used violently. And so I wanted to make this gesture available. So the first one is this sculpture you see. It is a 7 by 7 by 7 centimeters, cubic centimeters in concrete, and it's titled and signed. And it is made as an open edition with virtually infinite number of copies. And it's made available in the gallery. Now maybe you can see the next image. So that's the first day of the exhibition, and these stones are laid on top of yesterday's newspapers, and the public can take one stone. It's made available through an exchange. And there's this cardboard there that you can read that is written, the first stone that you find in the street that fills your hand can be exchanged for one of these sculptures. So the public is invited to go out in the street, find the first stone. So the first stone also becomes not the very one first, but like everyone has its first stone. And bring it back to the gallery to have the sculpture. And so like it's like trading work for work, not giving the public, like it's not a gift, it's I'm making people work for me as well, because they give back another stone. And when you're doing this, maybe you could change something. So this is how you found them there is like already 2 that were exchanged. Maybe the next one. Yeah, so that's a simulation I made it myself. So when we walk in the street carrying a stone, it's like a gun. So and that is part of the gesture. Let's say the complexity of the gesture. People start to look at you in a suspicious way, and and actually the stone I'm giving them is even more lethal than the stone you find in the street, because it has corners and so it's a work that it's hard for me to. I mean, it's a sculpture technically, but it requires a certain performance of the public too. So that's this exactly gray area. I'm interested in when I say about gestures, because these projects, they demand a certain gesture, a certain performance for the public, and
displacing the stones during
so that's important as well. When you that image was the first day, maybe the next image. Okay. Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I have to open it.
On the other program. That was an important decision. I didn't want to, once you arrive in the gallery, I didn't want for people to see all the stones, because it would be easily recognized as a sculpture in a minimalist register. So the first day they were just one row, and they were made available according to the demand. So on the day of the opening, this is right after the day of the opening, so we had like more or less 200 stones exchanged. And the stones that are brought to the gallery are kept, so you have like a linear chronological progression of the work. And so in the end, the work, this open edition, is converted in one collection of just one sculpture. And the idea is, because if I display it, then all my concrete cubes on one time, it will be become like a calendar or something like, and people would not be, it would be beautiful, but not insightful for the exchange. And so, okay, I'm going back to the performance thing. So, when you are out in the streets looking for the first stone, you are like performing a gesture. So it's an ideal performance that's completely apart from having like one body performing something for an audience. It's more about making a gesture available for yourself, let's say. And like for me, the important time of the work is at exactly the time that you are in between the two visits of the gallery. It's this interval that while you're carrying a stone with all the meanings that can come from the height of the stone, from the fact that it could be a weapon, but also from the social situation that you're on the street carrying something that could be a gun. And it was made in a very posh neighborhood in São Paulo, and that's something a report I had from friends. There weren't so much stones available. At a certain point, people were stealing from the gardens. So this gesture also was more or less like borderline with given legal, or it was like a very pacifist gesture in a way, but at the same time it scratched at violence. Violence was not it was like always present in this gesture. At the time this work was made was right after the elections, and there was also like a great what we're seeing now in Brazil at that time was like in the beginning of this, not the beginning, was right after the elections, the polarization was so strong. And the images, these concrete pieces leaning against the walls, this is a collection of newspaper clips showing people making agreements. And it was very nice to make a pair of these two gestures, like the first stone that was about the deactivating violence and also deactivating accusations. Trying to, yeah, peace, but you're like, your anger is in your hand. Like it's not a hippie piece, it's more. And so the collections, these images were all of people shaking hands, making hugs, and there was no hierarchy on the choice. But I've shown this work before in Italy, and the reception was really interesting. How the reception in Brazil at that specific time, people were like, "Oh, this work is so heavy, like this is so disgusting," because there are a lot of politicians, and we have this specific Brazilian politics of agreement. The paradigm of the Brazilian man is the cordial man. It's the same root of the cordial man would be the man that agrees with everybody, and in the end he doesn't agree, not even with himself, because he makes so much commitments. But well, I'm just saying that because it was practically the same work showed when I was showed in Europe 1 year before. It didn't have the same political balance, and for me it was also like a work about love in this way. It has all the disgusting part of the politicians, but there was also like people in sports, lots of gay kisses, and the newspapers. Let's see the next ones. Maybe there's yeah. So there are no So again, maybe if we can make the next. That's my abstract paintings that do. Yeah. So that was work that was made like nearly 6 months after the first one. I was invited to do a site-specific work in a cave. It's a very singular place in the Backlash School in Rio de Janeiro. And so one of the sources of my gestures, I have like a huge archive of newspaper clips, and they are organized by the only category in the archive is gestures. And this work is made with a collection of images of protests using fire. And the title of the work is the Mão no Fogo, the hand on fire, which is an expression, I believe it exists in English. When you trust someone blindly, you put your hand on fire by means that you're not going to be burnt. So it's a very, let's say, it's a very ethical gesture because it doesn't give you any guarantee. Like to put the hand on fire, it's like you yourself put yourself as a guarantee for someone or something or a cause, etc. And so I used the let's maybe go for the next image. The cave was completely dark, so candles were made available for the public. They could use the candles or not, but you could only see the piece if you had a candle in the hands of the image. So all the violence that was contained in these images, they were like really, like people were really throwing fire to cars or destroying things. The public had to put their hand on fire, like in order to see the work. It was also required a certain performance. It is as if, like, in order to look at art, you had to put yourself in a certain condition for looking. It wasn't as if it's not something neutral, like you have to make an effort. And let me maybe move for the next, yeah. So it was completely dark, and the walls of the cave were covered with these images. I used this technique of encapsulating images in concrete. Briefly explaining this technique was taken from cheap grave constructions in Brazil. Their molds doesn't have a bottom. They use newspaper to isolate. So they pour concrete to make a concrete slab to be the lid of the grave. They pour concrete on the mold, which is just a frame. It doesn't have a bottom, and they use newspaper as the bottom. And so the dead person is buried and has something to read. And I saw that once in a cemetery, as one of these cheap graves were under reformation, and I could only see it because it was being restored, and they started to use this. So, and this cave is funny as well because it's an artificial cave. It's not a natural one. So it's made of the same material. And
the cave is made of concrete.
Yes, yeah, it's a concrete cave. Kiki, the images are very similar now. You can, yeah, it's a shame because of the light you can see much, but still. So all the content of this archive of protests with fire, they were somewhat like the information aspect of it was somewhat erased, and it was somewhat that their value as information was somewhat dissolved, and the attention you have to pay to these images were very, very concentrated because you have a lack of light, you have to take care of not to burn your hand, and also the picturesque thing made you look at these images in a very, very different way. Yeah, no, it was a very, especially if you could go there at night, it became something almost religious in a way, because caves are also sites for adoration of images, and this archive is most of the, well, I don't make, when I collect images, I don't make restrictions around central information. So, of course, most of them comes from Brazil, but they are like from nearly everywhere. But the work also registers this past, the recent political history of the country, with a protest wave in 2013, and it's like it is as if I was proposing like a different reading, as of looking at protests not on, because usually when I think of protests, we think about a cause, like people are fighting for something. I'm more concerned with the form, to see protests as language, like without, if you remove the cause, you have like very interesting language being constructed. And in the end, like putting your hand to fire is just trying to assert a certain truth, and these certain truths can only be asserted by yourself. It's like the gesture of putting a hand to fire for something. The only guarantee, the ethical guarantee for it is you yourself. And it was a very ambiguous gesture, like, because with the delicacy of the light, the precarity of the situation, and the content of the images, like people really destroying. So you had like two very different registers. One on one side, like a care on the side of the public, like trying to see carefully something, be careful with yourself. And the other side, this fire, very beautiful but very violent as well. Yes, so I think now we might be open for our round table.